Hey there, and welcome back to the third-person camera tutorials in Unity. In this lesson, we're going to be working on getting our pivots to be a little bit more accurate. Right now, if you look at them, you can see in the angle value, if I slam exactly backwards on the stick, I end up getting angles around usually like 160 or lower. They're not that accurate. And the reason for this is because each one of these animations has a certain condition that gets met, and during that condition, it executes a transition period. And that transition period can be anywhere from half a second to a full second to however long you want. So if I make these transitions a little bit longer, you'll be able to see that accuracy goes down even further. So there's 139. And that's because the angle value is still being set during this transition period, and the character is moving during that. So it's giving us really inaccurate angle values. So we're going to learn how to change that and get it to be a little bit better. So first of all, I would just make these not quite as large because they don't need to be that big of transitions. That's one thing you can do, but the better thing to do is definitely to spend some time working on your logic. If you look at Mario, when he runs, and if you slam back exactly on the stick, he makes a perfect 180-degree turn. And this is what the user expects, so that's what your game should provide for them. It's the same sort of thing here in Zelda. If you run and then change direction abruptly, it's hard to get it to work, but there is pivoting in this game too. There you go. So it's exactly 180 as well. So we need to get ours to be a bit more accurate then. The way that we're going to do this is we need to recognize when these transitions are happening and make our code react to that and consider that during a pivot. So it's kind of unintuitive the way this works, and there's not a lot of documentation on it. But if you look at the Animator controller, it has a method called getAnimatorTransitionInfo, and that gives you a Animator transition info struct. And what this does is we can access it just in the same way that we did with our state info object here. So we just want to make another one of these info objects and just query that in the same way that we're querying it for these pivot IDs. We want to make another ID for each one of these transitions. And it may not be exactly obvious what the name of the transition is. It's not this here. It's baselayer.locomotion to baselayer.locomotion pivot R. There is no space between this two characters here, but there is a space between the word and the arrow on either side. So it took me a while to figure that out, and there's not a lot of people online who have much to say about that. So hopefully this is something unique this tutorial will provide. So we want to change that. We want to make two new variables. We're going to make one called locomotion pivot transition left and locomotion pivot transition right. Now we want to populate these variables with the name hashes, and we've been doing that just right on our start method. So there we go. The next thing we want to do is we want to add that code to our pivot logic. So our pivot method currently says if name hash is pivot left ID or right ID. Let's add some logic to make that also take into account the transitions. So that's good. Let's give that a shot and see if that makes our turns any more accurate. Oh, we need to declare transition info. So transition info will be a new variable that we're going to declare at the top of our script. Animator transition info, put that there, and we want to initialize it at the same time we initialize our state info. And since we're just using the first layer, you can just put a 0 here to signal that you just want the first layer. Okay, hopefully that'll compile now. Okay, great. Let's give that a shot. Hopefully we'll be getting values closer to 180 now instead of 130. So that was 178. That was pretty good. 177. But you notice it's still not quite right. The camera's turning during the pivot. So we need to extend this logic here and go into our camera script. And where we have our behind camera, we want to add one more condition to the look direction, because the look direction is going to affect that angle direction. Because if you look in our controller script, we're grabbing the camera's forward vector. So if we're turning the camera, that forward vector is going to change. So the easy way to fix that is just to give it a condition, and we're going to make that condition that it's not in a pivot. So we added this follow is not in pivot condition. So let's see what that looks like now. That's much better. So we're getting nice values that are large enough, and our camera's not turning while we're pivoting. I'd say that's a pretty good win. And that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to be discussing how to make a free camera. So stay tuned for that.